Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Modern Farming Podcast, where we bring you insights directly from the field about food, agriculture, and the incredible environment we all live in. This week, we're really excited to have Quina from Munich, North Dakota. She kindly reminded us, yes, there is a Munich in the United States. Quina works with students of all ages, actually, in AI and in agriculture. And one of the things that Brad and I talk a lot about on the Modern Farming Podcast is technology in agriculture. One of the coolest things that we found is there are teachers like Quina who are working with younger students to implement AI, Google technology, and really fascinating kind of Star Wars kind of stuff. One, to keep them interested, and two, hopefully be the next generation of farmers, as we all need to make sure there is another generation of farming in the United States. So, Quina, thank you for being with us. I know it's early for you before school. So, first off, thank you from all of us, all of our listeners, for what you do, inspiring kids. Obviously, nobody goes into that, education profession to get rich. You have to love it. And so we thank you, all of us. Thank you very much for your dedication to our kids. So, real quick, I want to just ask you. So, one of the projects, as we learned about what you're doing, one of those projects was with, you said, some ninth graders, and they were implementing some Google technology. Can you just tell us real quick, start off with that project and how that all got started and really what the outcomes were?
Yeah, I created this project as a part of a Edge AI program too that I took last summer. So I wanted to create a project that students can relate to and actually invest in. I know a lot of times we teach students through different lessons and they can't really relate to it. So the effort that they put into it is not, a whole lot. I found that my students really put a lot of effort into this because we are surrounded by crops. A lot of the students I teach are live on a farm or they are farmers. So the project, the students picked a crop and then they collected healthy and disease samples of each of those crops that they chose. And then we trained a Google Teachable machine to recognize the healthy and the diseased crops. In addition to, the students also researched their crops, how to scout for the disease, which is normally done in July-ish, and what kind of chemicals are used to treat those diseased crops. They went out on their own and also looked up the cost of how much it would cost to get rid of that disease. We also visit with 2 local agronomists too, to kind of pick their brains on, how you can prevent some of these diseases, which a lot of it is brought in, through wind and that kind of thing. And we did little presentations on it, and yeah, we had a lot of excitement when we did this project.
So fascinating. What were some of, and maybe you know the names of them, maybe not, but what were some of the diseases that the students were looking at?
I remember there was white mold.
Okay,
And,
soybeans.
yep. That's the only one that comes to mind. But this was done with a group of 13 students because we're not very big school, but
Sure. So how many 13 students were part of that project, but how many students do you have? You're the tech and engineering head of education there. You're the STEM teacher for K through 6. You also do also the tech coordinator. So how many total students do you have enrolled or part of your overall program?
we only have a little over 90 kids K through 12.
Okay. Awesome. And all
Oh,
of them touch this kind of STEM and stuff like that? All of them get part of this?
in STEM, our STEM kind of has switched because we have such a big push for cybersecurity from our state.
Mm.
So our STEM has kind of shifted that direction. But in the past, they have done different kinds of projects through our K through 6 STEM. My 10th graders also just did a greenhouse, one of those hydroponic ones. So we have that in our teacher's lounge right now. So she takes care of the pH and her class only has 3 kids in it, so you can understand the scope of our class sizes a little bit.
Queenie, you had touched on drones when we were talking ahead of time. What are you actually doing with the drones? Is that in the field when you're out trying to get samples?
Well, this was the first year that I did this project. Some of these kids, some of our students don't live on a farm, so they have no idea what some of these other ones have experienced or do. So when we visited the farm and we brought, the drone up just to see the crops and that kind of thing, it was just like their mind was blown. Like, oh, this happened so close to me. So just exposing the kids to that part of it, maybe in the future, spreading our wings a little bit and going a little further with the drones. I mean, there's the opportunity there for that.
Really,
anything to get the kids interested in with technology and ag that's a good thing.
Mm.
And like I said, some of those kids that are I have this little guy, 9th grader. He's been driving the tractor since he was 5. And knows everything about the farm and where to find the prices and and you got to look for this, and like at the age that he is, it's like that's crazy.
I know. What's more crazy is you said, and I've lived in the Midwest as well, that when you get in these little towns, and you're in a tiny little town, so I'm kind of surprised to hear it, but even still, in some of the smaller towns I lived in, 20, 30,000 people, some of those kids who didn't grow up on the farm, they're still they still don't really know what's happening. Just like on the other side of the tracks, like just right outside of town is where you are. Millions of acres of crops going north into Canada. I mean, they are surrounded by agriculture. It's kind of interesting that some of these kids are still learning what's happening right in their backyard.
Yeah, and the one that I said was driving tractor at 5, like he was talking about, yeah, you gotta, 100 weight, and I'm like, okay, what's 100 weight? Like he was teaching me too with everything else, and it's like he's definitely going to be taking over the farm when he gets to be the age.
Yeah. So
do you see kids are more of them wanting to leave the farm, or most of them want to stay with the farm? What is the trend?
I think especially where we live, there's such deep family ties to those farms. The kids might leave and go, get their education in agronomy or whatever, but they're returning.
Mm-hmm.
Good to hear. Yep. Good to hear. So let me ask you this: how do you, in a small community, small school, public school, how do you pay for this? How does it get funded?
Well, there wasn't a whole lot of costs associated with this project in particular. However, in different projects I've done, I've sought out grants, partnerships with different colleges, and our community is very supportive also. So we don't run into a whole lot of times where we can't do a project because the funds aren't there.
That's good to hear. The reason why I ask, I think there's a lot of, as you know, better than we do, Brad knows this, they've been around schools a lot, but I think there's a lot of teachers who want to do more, but I think they always come back to, how do we pay for it? And so it's really nice to hear, and I'm glad to hear that you're able to fund these things. You're in a tiny little school, you're in a tiny little community, and you're still finding ways to fund it. I think that gives some of our other listeners hope that, no matter where you're at, even if you're in a big city, there's probably a few ways that you can get some funding for this, whether it's through grants or, teaming up with colleges. That's a wonderful idea. So are there plans to expand the program? What's the future look like for you in the initiatives you've got going now?
The program that I was partnered with, that Edge AI program that I talked about that I did last summer, I'm hoping to get into that program again this summer and maybe build off the lesson that I created last summer.
Great. Now that's a program you go to in your off time or in the summertime?
Yeah, it's a program that you have to apply for. I think they accepted 10 of us from North Dakota last year. So it's a whole bunch of colleges. I don't know all of the colleges, but the branch I was through NDSU.
Awesome. So you were selected out of a pool of other instructors, other teachers, as one of those 10?
Yep.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So what else? I mean, do the kids come up with new ideas or new projects, or are there some things that you've learned through these other programs, like, hey, here's where you might want to take these kids, or do the kids kind of direct you on the projects?
I think there's a little bit of both. I'm always coming up with different projects, like probably way out in left field. And then I'm like, okay, how can I make this, be a reality? So I have a lot of that going on too. And I will ask the students too, like, do you have any ideas of projects that we could do? Well, I'm kind of interested in this or that. And I try to find a way of how I can incorporate that into our curriculum, and then also addressing the standards too.
For your next projects coming up with the AI and the crops, what's really up and coming, what we would like to see is where you start going into looking at deficiencies and toxicities in plants. And because that you can see the coloration of a leaf, and that should be pretty cut and dried, and then you have multiple combinations of deficiencies, and I think you could plug something like that into AI and really give to correct the deficiency to lessen pest and disease. That's I think that's one day that I think that'll be drones. I think that technology is coming, looking at nutrient deficiencies and imbalances. So I think that would be a big help and I think the kids, it's something you can really, a yellow vein or whatever, it's pretty easily identifiable. And then the severity of it, I think that would be really cool for a next step.
Yeah, definitely. So how would that's just taken by the coloration then of the leaves, or is there sampling done, or?
Well, you can take a tissue sample or some kind of plant sample and then find out if it's missing something or has too much of something, and then compare that to what the leaf looks like. Because you have certain deficiencies where it'll be a paling of a leaf, or a staining of a leaf, or a yellow vein, or a yellow between the veins, and then you figure out what those are. And then I'm not up on the AI, but that's where AI I think could really help severities and combinations, and there's an infinite amount of data that could be.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I love this idea, Brad. Because here's the one thing that Brad and I know, being in agriculture for so many years. The one thing, and as well, we're not getting hundreds of thousands of graduates every year who want to come to be part of the ag process. And so we know that every year there's less and less farmers, there's less and less people who want to get into agriculture. It's becoming a smaller margin business, if that's even possible. So I think what we're getting at is for guys like Brad and us who own their own business or are consultants or sell products on the farm, you just can't get around all these acres. So if you had, some sort of drone technology that was looking at leaves, and we already know the deficiency symptoms of leaves, so that's already well documented. The green veins and the yellow intermediate parts. That's usually an iron deficiency, and then if it's vice versa, it's a nitrogen deficiency or something like that. So if you could pair those two, that would be really cool. I just wonder, how many of these kids do you think will? I know this is a hard question to ask, but do you think that this type of technology is going to be the next generation farmer, or do you think this is just a project that they're doing and then they'll go back to the way Dad did it or Grandpa did it?
I would hope that they would want innovative technology on their farms to help them, so that they're not, putting in hours manually. But yeah, I'm not sure how many would do that. It is tough when, Dad and Grandpa have taught you a certain way of doing things. And then if they're still kind of hanging around and you do it a different way, you might be in a little trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Are the kids excited? Are they really excited to come in and work on these projects? Are they thinking about them when they're not at school or?
Well, it's kind of funny that you asked that. We went to our state capitol a couple weeks ago to showcase this project to legislators to hopefully promote, more funding towards STEM geared projects and for schools. And one of my students couldn't come because he's in basketball and they were in districts, and he told his mom, well, I'm just going to go. I'm going to Bismarck because I'm really interested in this kind of stuff. And she's like, you're part of the team. You need to be with your team. So he was pretty bummed that he couldn't come because he loves talking about all of this kind of stuff. And he's the one that was driving at the age of 5 in a tractor. So
So great.
He definitely, is quite invested.
That's really cool. Really cool. Well, so what happens in the summer? You go to your classes, you prepare for the following year, or are there programs in the summer as well?
I I am in all kinds of different programs. So I will do my programs in the summer, and then if I get accepted, and then make my lessons and then teach those when we commence school in the fall. However, for this particular project, we got our samples off of Google. It would have been nice for the kids to get their own samples.
Okay.
But with us starting school in August, we're already hitting that harvest time frame.
Right.
So that point has already passed. So if we could, it would be nice to have the opportunity for them to collect their samples, in July-ish. That would be ideal. But for our time frame, it's not conducive.
And y'all don't have greenhouses or anything where you can grow other stuff in the fall?
We don't yet. I'm actually in talks with one of the community members. They're trying to put up a big old greenhouse that would also produce, because we have a small grocery store in town. So that whatever produce would come out of the greenhouse would go to the grocery store, and then some of it could also come to the school to be served for our school lunches. So that we're just in the talks of how we can get that started too. So that would help.
Well, that's very cool. So there's no restrictions on that. I mean, as far as food safety, you can grow it, sell it, take it to the grocery stores, restaurants, feed it within the school if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Things are different.
Well, and I didn't know, because the guy that approached me about all of it, he's on the board that approves the grants. So, we're trying to get that up and rolling, because our grocery store isn't ran like a normal grocery store. You have to buy a pass for it. And there's a person
like
there Monday and Wednesday. Kinda, yeah. There's a person there Monday and Wednesday. Other than that, there's nobody in the store. So you pay with your card on your way out, and
Amazing. Amazing. Queena, I know you've got it's time for school here, so we're gonna let you go early because we don't want you to be late. But hey, so how can we help? We've got a Facebook page. Does the school have a Facebook page or anything like that?
Yes, we do. Munich Public School.
Awesome. How can Munich Public School on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you post stuff about your STEM program and all that on that as well?
Yes.
So great. So great. Well, the reason why I ask, I know we have several teachers who listen. Brad and I are here in Florida, but this is a national podcast. And I know there's a lot of teachers in your position that want to do more, like I said, and they're passionate about agriculture. They have kids that are passionate about agriculture. And so I think it's really refreshing to hear, I hate to keep saying it, but in a really small market, you're doing really great things. So we appreciate that very much. If Brad or I or the Green Gene Foundation can be any help or assistance to you, we have a ton of knowledge. The Green Gene Foundation and Matt and Rachel and the whole team, this is what they do. Brad and I are just lucky to have a little spawn off here of the program and get to do a podcast. So if we can be of any help, we would certainly love to. feel free to reach out to Brad and I. But thank you for taking time out of your school day to be with us, and we hope to have you back on soon.
Thank you.
All right. Be well. Have a great week.
Take care.
You too.